This is Kurtop, and here are 100 unexpected discoveries from lake and sea bottoms. A block from the Ice Age. 31-year-old teacher from Indianapolis, Brendan Dudas, decided to remove a stone that was getting in the way of mowing the lawn near his house. He started digging and realized the rock didn't end. He had to carry the dirt out in buckets. He recorded the process on TikTok, and the video went viral with over 9 million views. The advice to call a crane proved correct. It became clear only after using a lift that the boulder weighed over 10.3 tons. Dudas said it could be 10 to 15,000 years old. That was during the last ice age. He left the boulder as the yard's centerpiece, surrounded it with smaller stones, added mulch and soil, and planted native plants. He says he wants to install lighting. In this way, the giant boulder from the Ice Age became a local landmark. In an interview with People, he admitted that working with the boulder forced him to renovate the entire yard, and according to his neighbors, it inspired others to work on their own yards as well. Geologically, it's simple. A glacier brought the stone, and over time, soil covered it. From a human perspective, it's a rare case when a problem turns into an opportunity to tidy up and leave a mark. Steak from an ancient bison? In 1979, gold prospectors in Alaska found what seemed like an ordinary rock. But beneath ice, it was actually a nearly intact bison, not a human or mammoth. They named it Blue Babe due to its bluish skin tint, caused by a reaction between iron and the rock. The bison died around 50,000 years ago in the Pleistocene era. Marks suggest a cave lion killed it, but the real mystery is how it was preserved. Due to the permafrost, the tissue stayed dense, almost like jerky. Hair, muscles, and skin all remained intact. This was the first step bison ever found in this condition. When the research was finished, the project leader, paleontologist Dale Guthrie, decided to celebrate with a dinner. He took a small piece of meat from the neck, stewed it with onions, carrots, spices, and served it to his colleagues. The meat turned out to be tough with a strong, earthy taste. Someone described the aroma as mushroom-like or damp glacial. No one was poisoned. Everyone survived. This case became a legend because it's not every day you have dinner from an animal that died tens of thousands of years before you. And although it was a scientific experiment, not a gastronomic show, it serves as a reminder. The past sometimes returns not to a museum, but right to the table. The mystery at Abu Kirbe. Archaeologists off Alexandria have recovered artifacts from an ancient city submerged for over 2,000 years. Excavations took place in Abu Kirbe, once home to the Ptolemaic port of Canopus. They found pieces of temple columns, a sphinx head, a priest statue, and a large headless granite torso. The work was carried out under the supervision of the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities and divers using equipment for archaeological dives. Archaeologists say Canop sank due to earthquakes and tidal shifts that collapsed the Nile Delta. Afterwards, silt and sand buried its streets, temples, and necropolises. The artifacts date to the Ptolemaic and Roman periods, roughly the 3rd century before Christ to 3rd century AD. The image style and stone types confirm this. Sheriff Fadi of the Ministry of Tourism and Antiquities said all discovered items are being restored and will be included in the Secrets of the Sunken City exhibition at the National Museum of Alexandria. The exhibition already features 86 rare exhibits, showing what life was like on the Egyptian coast in the times before the sea claimed this city. Is fishing on Mars possible? Our understanding of Mars changes when viewing images of Noach's Terra. Amid dust and silence, orbital probes discovered over 15,000 kilometers of ancient stone river channels. They stretch like scars and plateaus, vanish beneath sedimentary rock, and reveal a story millions of years old. These valleys are not just dried-up cracks, but real traces of water flow. Along them, sedimentary terraces have been preserved, exposed by erosion, and elongated ridges that resemble channels, fossilized after the flow disappeared. All evidence points to a past climate here that could support rain on the red planet. The very idea sounds almost heretical, but data from orbital probes confirm that Mars's atmosphere was once dense and humid. Scientists call this era the Noachian, a time when the planet was blue. Rivers, lakes, and deltas that are now dust once brought life to these valleys. Water flowed here, for more than just a day or a year. It sculpted the landscape, leaving deposits still visible today. Everything we see now, the cold desert, rocks, storms, is just the final scene of a long play. And when Perseverance finds clay minerals or stones polished by the stream, it's actually digging in an ancient riverbed where something might once have been alive. So, does that mean you could have gone fishing on Mars in ancient times? The ice is 1.2 million years old. In the laboratory of the Alfred Wegener Institute, Bremerhaven, Germany, scientists are cutting the oldest ice core on Earth, a cylinder 10 centimeters in diameter and 2.8 kilometers long, extracted from an altitude of 3,200 meters at the Concordia Station, Antarctica. Radioisotope dating indicates an age of more than 1.2 million years, which is twice as old as the previous record holder, European Project for Ice Coring in Antarctica, 800,000 years. Air bubbles preserve past atmospheres. Glaciologists want to understand why, a million years ago, the glacier cycle shifted from every 41,000 years to about 100,000 years. Measuring carbon monoxide, 2-methane, and dust levels gives direct data on how greenhouse gases relate to temperature. And an unexpected bonus, the drill broke through a thin layer of ice at the basal mark and extracted a piece of granite. This is likely the upper edge of Antarctic bedrock. Geologists can soon date when the continent was covered with ice. Initial results will be ready in a year. This core will give scientists a long timeline from the past and make climate models more accurate when we talk about the rise of carbon monoxide. Glacial phase. Poland, Lake Lednica. While working near the first Pièce fortress, archaeologists found a 1.34-meter oak beam part of a hook that kept the rampart from spreading. On one end, there is a carved human face, an oval rim, an arch above the forehead, a rounded chin, measuring about 13.5 by 10 centimeters. The face looked at the water, not the fortress. Dendrochronology gave the exact age of the tree trunk. It's around 960 to 975 AD, the very time when the prince's residence, a chapel and baptismal pools, stood on Lednitsky Island. For the Slavs of the 10th century, carved human faces on building elements were rare. Here, the image was placed on the outer side of the rampart, as if someone was addressing it to the lake. This could be a water spirit, a guardian of the crossing, or a Christian symbol at the edge of paganism. The island is a key site for the Christianization of Polish lands, and it is compared to Slavic anthropomorphic figurines from Wollin and four-faced idols. There are stylistic similarities, but no direct analogies. The carved face is currently being conserved, with the wood stabilized to prevent cracking outdoors. The plan is to show it at the Museum of the First Piasts in late 2026. The Baltic Disc. 2011 Swedish divers scanned the seabed and spot a perfect 60-meter wide circle. A straight groove leads from it, as if something braked and landed on the seafloor. The photo spreads through the media: an underwater flying saucer, a Millennium Falcon. Tourists book spots on boats, and ufologists are already writing books. 2025, a team of geologists performs an underwater LiDAR scan and conducts thorough research. The structure is odd, but inside it's normal granite and glacial rock shells in the cross-sections. It's a boulder moved by ice for 1,000 years, now stuck in the eel, leaving a unique trace. The conclusion is similar to earlier findings. Sometimes a perfect saucer is just a stone polished by a glacier, but this particular stone made people dive to the bottom. They brought new equipment and showed how science disproves myths and fakes. The stone stayed a stone, and the Baltic Sea got its first underwater geopark. Gears of mystery. The Antikythera mechanism, the world's oldest computer, has always felt like something from an Indiana Jones movie. Bronze wheels, a handle, dials, an eclipse, and an ancient National Aeronautics and Space Administration in a box. A recent 3D simulation has broken the legend down to its gears. Scientists have recreated every gear with micron-level precision and ran the virtual device through a full calendar cycle. The result was surprising. After 4 months, the gears caught and the load grew. By month 6, the digital copy jammed. The error wasn't in the software. The model considers all casting defects, tooth pitch, and axle backlash measured on the artifact. If the numbers are correct, the mechanism in its original form couldn't reliably predict eclipses years in advance, as enthusiasts claimed. The desktop planetarium toy version suddenly looks more plausible. The owner would turn the handle and demonstrate the movement of the sun and moon. That's enough to impress an elite audience, but not for a priest astronomer's daily calculations. There's another possibility. The bronze lay underwater for 2,000 years. Corrosion ate away fractions of a millimeter and disrupted the perfect synchronization. If that's the case, the original device really worked flawlessly, and what we're seeing is just its rusted screenshot. To test the hypothesis, engineers must make a copy with perfectly even teeth and repeat the chronomarathon. Despite ongoing debates, the Antikythera mechanism remains as puzzling as a Rubik's Cube. Antiquity adds mystery. We may underestimate ancient engineers or overestimate our urge to find advanced technology in every unknown. 118 Days at Sea. In 1973, the British couple Morris and Marilyn Bailey survived after 118 days adrift in the Pacific Ocean. Their journey began a year earlier, when they left Southampton on the yacht Orlin, heading to New Zealand. After passing through the Panama Canal, their route went through the Galapagos Islands. At dawn on March 4th, 1973, the yacht collided with a whale and suffered critical damage. The vessel sank, and the couple escaped onto an inflatable raft and rubber boat, bringing minimal food, a compass, and some tools. At first, the Baileys used rainwater and leftover food, but their supplies quickly ran out. To survive, they had to catch fish and sea turtles using homemade hooks made from English pins. Previously, the couple followed a vegetarian diet, so switching to meat was a serious challenge. They endured storms, overheating, and constant saltwater exposure, which caused skin sores. During the entire drift, 7 ships passed by, but none of them noticed the raft. Their signal flares were faulty, and they didn't have a mirror to reflect light. Though physically exhausted, Bailey and his group supported each other, stayed calm, read, and kept records. After 118 days, on June 30, 1973, they were spotted by the crew of the South Korean fishing vessel VEOLMI 306. The raft was drifting about 2,300 kilometers from the site of the wreck. The couple lost 18 kilograms each, but they were rescued and taken to Honolulu. After returning to England, the Baileys detailed their ordeal in the bestseller 117 Days Adrift. After recovering, they resumed sea voyages. The sunken port of Cleopatra. Off the coast near Taposiris Magna, west of Alexandria, archaeologists discovered a sunken area showing signs of an ancient harbor. Kathleen Martinez's team, together with marine archaeologist Bob Ballard, describes rows of massive foundations estimated to be over 6 meters high, cemented blocks, fragments of columns, amphorae for storage and transport, and most importantly, numerous anchors dating back to the era of Cleopatra VII. These items, docking lines, storage areas, and navigational equipment typically come with a working port. In 2022, an underground tunnel was also discovered here, stretching 1,227 meters toward the Mediterranean Sea. Inside it were ceramics and objects from the Ptolemaic period. The harbor likely served the city, the temple of Taposiris Magna, and Cleopatra's fleet during her reign. Dating and the maritime profile suggest this, but excavations, sediment dating, and connecting the structure to the ancient shoreline are still needed. If confirmed, we will have rare evidence of what the coastal network near the Ptolemaic capital looked like and how it functioned, not in text but in stone, wood, and iron. The wooden wheels of Lyde. In 2002, archaeologists in the Ljubljana Barje marshes of Slovenia found a 70-centimeter wheel and an oak axle. Radiocarbon dating showed it was 5,100 to 5,350 years old, older than Sumerian carts and any school chart dates for the wheel's invention. The design stands out for its simple, mature look. 2 maples are joined with oak pegs. Charring along the rim suggests it was fired for strength, indicating the craftsman already knew maintenance techniques. Initially, many bloggers argued the discovery rewrites history, asserting that Neolithic European hunter-fishermen were ahead of Mesopotamia. Scientists react to the discovery calmly. The dating has been confirmed, but the maple disc may have been part of a simple lift for fishing nets or a two-wheeled cart, and not a wheel for a large wagon at all. Even this modest version matters, showing people might have invented the wheel independently at least twice. The artifact is now displayed at the Ljubljana City Museum. Tourists touch the darkened rim, picturing how it once rolled its load over wooden planks. Could there be even more complex mechanisms from that Neolithic village hidden in the swamp? Petrified waves. The Curiosity rover has explored Gale Crater for 12 years, a vast basin over 150 kilometers wide. Its cameras are accustomed to dust, rocks, and endless horizons. But recently, images showed strange structures, rows of small ridges stretching in one direction, resembling frozen waves. Scientists long debated whether it was caused by wind, precipitation, or tectonics. Comparing the data with Earth's sedimentary models removed all doubt. These ribbed patterns were left by water, real waves that lapped on the surface of a standing lake. An ocean isn't required. Just 1 or 2 meters of water and moderate wind, conditions Mars's atmosphere may have provided then. The water rippled, left patterns in the sand, then dried, but the imprint lasted billions of years. This may seem like a minor discovery, just a few square meters, but it changes a lot. Before this, it was believed that ancient Martian bodies of water could have been hidden under ice, like those in Antarctica. We now know that Mars had at least one area with open water where waves reflected sunlight. Curiosity continues to climb to the top of Mount Sharp, and each new sediment layer reveals another page of this planetary chronicle. The layer with the waves is perhaps the last page of the time when Mars was still alive. The tree that survived. Trees rarely last centuries. Water, oxygen, and fungi destroy them faster than archaeologists, so organic finds are special. They reveal both the object's shape and the craftsman's touch. During an excavation in western Russia, a long wooden object with finger grooves and a carved end was found in a waterlogged layer. By its shape, it is an attached handle or a fastening element that once worked together with leather, a bone insert, or a bronze plate. Thin parallel scratches from a knife and draw knife are visible on the surface. By their frequency, you can distinguish the stages of work: rough shaping, subsequent polishing, and in some places finishing with an abrasive. Microscopy shows porosity and annual rings. That's enough to determine the species. They usually chose birch or alder because they're easier to work with and crack less when drying. Radiocarbon dating in ceramics place the complex in the late Stone Age to early Bronze Age. After extraction, the wood is wrapped in a damp cloth, then placed in a polyethylene glycol bath to replace water in the cell walls and prevent warping during slow vacuum drying. Even in conservation, subtle details appear: a small mark, an assembly notch, a micro hole for a cord, a rivet. These minor features together reveal the scenario of use. The handle was placed in a groove, fastened with a cord or pin, and used under load. The flesh of the fish god. The Dogon people live in the Bandiagara cliffs and every 60 years hold the Sigi festival, where they carry out the large Nomu mask. Legend says Nomu, an amphibious being, arrived in a thunderous copper egg, fell into a lake, and emerged half human, half fish. Nomu displayed star charts to people. It was noted that next to the bright Sirius is another dark, heavy star. Astronomers found this white dwarf, Sirius B, in the 19th century, but the Dogon knew of it long before telescopes. To ensure his lesson endured, Nomu shared his flesh and gave people pieces of his skin as sacred food, which is why the Dogon call his power Nyama Nomo, the life inside the fish god. They keep clay tablets with a pair of stars in secret sanctuaries. Scientists still cannot understand whether this knowledge is ancient or a later hint from missionaries, but the Dogon themselves are sure. The copper egg really did come and will return one day, when the time of the next Sigi comes. The history of UFOs is always a mix of fear, technology, and myths. Let's keep that in mind and move on. The first step out of the water. Near Edinburgh, in an abandoned quarry, paleontologists found a tiny 10-centimeter skeleton with small legs and a paddle-shaped tail under volcanic ash. They named it West Lothiana. It lost its gills and breathed air, but its smooth skin still risked drying out. Zircon analysis dated it at 346 million years old, 14 million years before vertebrates officially emerged on land. You can see the future in its small limbs, a tiny wrist and fingers, much like ours. The small creature lived by the swamp, crawled out for insects, then quickly slipped back into the water. A transitional organism shifts the start of terrestrial evolution and reveals many gaps remain in the ancient record. A submerged continent. Archaeologists discovered an entire ecosystem, not a sunken ship or artifacts at the bottom of the Madura Strait near Java. Layers of earth where remains of Homo erectus, fragments of skulls and traces of life about 140,000 years old, have been preserved, along with bones of giant bulls, turtle shells, and evidence of bones broken to extract bone marrow. This is not just an ancient human settlement, it is a fragment of a submerged continent, a vanished world that once connected the islands to the mainland. Scientists call it Sunderland, and today it lies underwater. Back then, these were plains, an Asian savanna with rivers, forests, and large animal herds. Archaeologists found processing marks on animal bones, like those made by mainland Homo erectus, though it was previously thought Javanese groups lacked these skills. It's now clear there was contact and cultural exchange between populations, sharing hunting, butchering, and shell processing methods. This speaks not only about technique, but also about memory and the transmission of knowledge. In addition to traces of hunting, they found remains of mollusks and river sharks. Everything indicates that there was once a rich, vibrant, and complex landscape here, where humans were part of the ecosystem, and now all of this is at the bottom. Sunderland submerged tens of thousands of years ago, leaving no signs of cities or temples, just vanishing quietly. Without occasional discoveries on the seafloor, we wouldn't even know it existed. It reminds us that large parts of history can vanish over time, leaving only a bone fragment in the silt. Karelian petroglyphs. Many people know about the famous caves with rock paintings like Altamira and Lascaux, but few know that the oldest mysterious rock paintings are not there, but in Russia, in Karelia. The Karelian petroglyphs are among the oldest rock carvings. Their age ranges from 5,000 to 6,000 years, and some experts believe they are even older. The unusual word petroglyph refers to images carved into rocks. They can be found on almost every continent on Earth, but the Karelian ones are truly unique. The location of the drawings plays a big role. The petroglyphs are located in the most amazing places, sanctuaries. Ancient artists settled by the White Sea at the Vigi River's mouth and on Lake Onega's east side. The drawings found on the islands of the White Sea are mostly small, ranging in size from 20 to 50 centimeters, but there are also real giants up to 3 meters long. The petroglyphs of the White Sea are quite close to reality. The artists depicted boats, hunting scenes painted in great detail, as well as compositions showing battles. Evil spirits are present here. The biggest figure on Shoyruksha Island is a 1-meter-tall demon with a large hand, and many more demons are found near Lake Onega. You can also find images of aliens here. There are over 1,000 drawings ranging in size from a couple of centimeters to several meters. Among them are swans, whose long necks make them look like dinosaurs, solar symbols, spacesuits, and televisions. The most famous of these drawings is a demon, 2.5 meters tall, split in half by a deep crack. Within a kilometer radius of the demon, navigation devices fail and clocks malfunction. A full Titanic scan. A complete digital 3D scan of the Titanic was done for the first time, combining hundreds of thousands of images into a model that lets you examine every part of the sunken liner. The scan uncovered details that were once hidden: destroyed decks, personal items, and structural elements. Experts paid special attention to the stern, the portholes, and the site where the hull broke. For example, they discovered that one of the portholes exactly matched eyewitness accounts describing the moment of the collision with the iceberg. The model also confirmed something important. Until the very end, the engineering compartment continued to supply electricity. This allowed the lighting to stay on longer and gave passengers more time to evacuate. This aligns with reports that the ship's lights stayed on until the end. The scan is more than an image. It lets experts study the Titanic as if it were on land, not underwater. There's something especially strange about seeing something that died so clearly. The Great Flood, myth or catastrophe? The Great Flood story is one of the most universal, in world culture. This is known not only from the Bible, where Noah builds the ark, but also from the Sumerian epic of Ziusudra, the Babylonian story of Utnapishtim, the Indian myth of Manu, the Greek tale of Deucalion, Chinese chronicles, Native American legends, and Arctic tales. Such a coincidence seems unlikely to be accidental, making one wonder if the flood actually happened and when. One of the most convincing hypotheses speaks of an event about 7,600 years ago. A sharp rise in world ocean levels caused salty water to rush through the Bosporus into the Black Sea lowland at that time. Geologists say the water level rose 140 meters, flooding large areas. Fertile land became sea. This event could really have seemed like the end of the world for people of that era, but was it a global flood? Probably not. For people living on river floodplains or coastal lowlands, this was truly a global catastrophe. Imagine water washing away homes, livestock, land, villages, and ancestors. People escape on rafts and flee to the mountains. Centuries later, the memory becomes a universal, terrifying myth. I'm amazed this ancient fear still lives in us. Even in the 21st century, we are afraid of floods. We talk about climate catastrophe as if we genetically remember how the world once really drowned. And maybe it's not just a myth, it's a warning. Polished stone tools. The oldest polished stone tools were discovered in Japan, and they are about 30,000 years old. It is believed that stone axes played a major role in deforestation during the Neolithic period, when people began to practice agriculture. Numerous axes have been found, some so heavy and unwieldy that they are thought to have served as both tools and symbols of social status. This means that a major leap in human social history happened at that time. But that's not all. Later, men began to be buried with such axes. The axe eventually symbolized society's collective memory of the individual, similar to modern tombstones. Glassworms under Antarctica. In February 2025, the Japanese Chimu Ice Prop Project was drilling the Ross Sea Shelf ice. At 820 meters deep, the camera found strange, hair-thin, transparent threads winding through ice crystals. When the probe tried to pick one up, it broke with a crunch, leaving glass-like fragments. Chemical analysis showed it was almost pure quartz, with microparticles of magnesium and sodium. Geologists are familiar with silicate glass in lava, but no one expected to find it in deep ice, especially at minus 20 degrees Celsius. The first theory is that subglacial salt lakes release silicic acid, which then solidifies and grows into fibers. It's a kind of natural fiber drawing process, only at sub-zero temperatures. Another theory suggests that under the thick ice, pressure reaches ocean depth levels, and the shelf constantly shakes from tides and cracks. In these conditions, dissolved silicon could crystallize not as ordinary grains, but stretch into ultra-thin quartz fibers, a natural glassy mineral, though extremely rare. But there's an interesting detail. The fiber structure is multi-layered, with a core and a shell of different densities, as if it was made for conducting light, literally a natural optical cable. In the laboratory, they passed an infrared beam through the fiber at a wavelength of about 1.3 microns, the same kind used in fiber optics. The light passed through with hardly any loss, so this naturally formed cable acts much like man-made optical fiber. Currently, glassworms are just a geological curiosity, but if a warm hydrothermal vent had once flowed beneath the ice, it could have been ideal for hidden biological or technological activity. The team is already planning a second descent. They want to take a long sample in its entirety and check if there are any foreign impurities in the shell. If traces of organic matter are found, or worse, microbial backlighting, Antarctica could get its first real, not fictional, communication cable with other forms of life or engineering. Algerian Atlantis. The underwater section of Tapasa is being studied as thoroughly as the shoreline ruins. Divers and marine archaeologists are documenting amphorae, cisterns, storage niches, and especially a pier carved into the rock, which appears to be an engineered structure. Together, these findings reveal a port active from at least the 4th to 3rd century before Christ. The finds profile indicates regular trade rather than occasional sea dumping. United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization urges expanding water area protection, as surf erosion threatens the cultural layer and lack of official status leaves the site exposed to heavy diving. And then we'll lose even what we've managed to see. The team is retrieving artifacts spotted back in the spring and is exploring the dark outlines of the structure with new equipment. Only a series of dives and deposit analysis will give the final answer. Before us is either a sunken city swept away by water or the lower level of an ancient harbor now beneath the waves. What fascinates me here is not the word Atlantis, but the opportunity to look into the working mechanics of a real port that was sustained by three eras at once: Phoenician, Roman, and Byzantine. If we document the docks and cisterns layout, we can finally understand the coastal hub's appearance, something unrecorded by sources but preserved by the sea. The sunken Helica. In ancient Greek myths, Atlantis wasn't the only city lost underwater. Helica also sank without a trace. The ancient Greeks thought Poseidon destroyed Helica by flooding it as punishment for the townspeople expelling the Ionians who worshipped him. This happened in 373 before Christ. For a century, this story was considered a myth, but at the end of the last century, the search for this mythical city was resumed and continued for more than 10 years. Helike was searched for underwater, but was actually found buried beneath the ground. It turned out an earthquake, not Poseidon, destroyed the ancient city by liquefying the ground. The city sank into the newly formed lagoon. Pyramidal ingots. Northern Bosnia, the Sava River. Underwater archaeologists are retrieving not jewelry or coins from the bottom, but hundreds of iron bipyramidal ingots, extremely rare blanks from which, 2,000 years ago, knives, arrowheads, and parts of everyday items were forged. They have a double pyramid shape and are rarely found in large quantities. Previously, museums in France, Germany, Slovenia, and Sarajevo had only single specimens, but here there's a whole stockpile. Dating shows it's from 1 or 2 centuries before our era, when local trade was reorganized by Rome's influence, and iron became the main currency for craftsmen. The archaeologist's theory is simple. This is a sunken cargo. The river surged, the barge could have capsized, or a wagon could have gone into the water at the crossing. The current scattered the lighter goods, while the heavy bipyramidal ingots settled in piles on the bottom. The site was measured with reference points. A 3D photogrammetry model was made, and each ingot was immediately placed in distilled water to slow down corrosion. Next is chemistry. Analysis will show the ore source and transport routes. If results match, the Sava River will appear as a key corridor before Rome, with Bosanska Posavina as a hub for turning iron into weapons, tools, and infrastructure. This is a rare case where a hoard tells not about luxury, but about production. These are not finished products, but blanks and logistics. It's a useful perspective on the economy of that time. Finds like these make it clear what exactly was traded and how it was transported. A mark in the sea. There is a tiny island in the Adriatic Sea. Its area is only 0.14 square kilometers. It is uninhabited. There is no pier, no buildings, not even paths, just rocks. From above, you'll notice what can't be seen from the ground. The island is covered with dozens of kilometers of stone walls, twisting, intersecting, and forming loops, circles, and lines. The entire structure looks like a giant fingerprint. The island, Balyanats, was visited centuries ago by Capria farmers. They planted grapevines and olive trees and built windbreak walls by hand, stone by stone, with no cement or machinery, only their hands and patience. The numbers are striking. On a 1.5 kilometer long island, there are 23 kilometers of hand-built walls, and across the Šibenik archipelago, about 100 kilometers in total. Today, United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization protects these walls as a monument to human labor. But Baljanak is uninhabited. The walls remain, but the people are gone. Antarctic sarcophagi. On an international Antarctic expedition, researchers from the United States, China, Russia, and India found an object that caused immediate controversy and concern. At a depth of several dozen meters beneath the permafrost, 4 dark sarcophagi were found, smooth even, with corners and edges so perfect that they could indicate laser processing. The shape resembled monolithic slabs, and the sarcophagi stayed above zero despite the cold. Researchers noted low-frequency humming and minor soil tremors nearby, although none of the equipment in the camp could have been the source of such vibrations. When one of the sarcophagi was opened, a metal cylinder was found, with symbols that did not belong to any known writing system. Scientists have put forward several theories about the origin of the find. One hypothesis suggests that the sarcophagi may be remnants of an ancient civilization that existed before the last ice age, while another allows for a technological origin and a connection to as yet unidentified technological experiments during the Cold War era. However, supporters of ufological theories believe that what we have here is a fragment of an extraterrestrial structure, abandoned or hidden under the ice many thousands of years ago. Despite the public outcry, official information about the incident remains limited, and the sarcophagi themselves were taken away for further study in closed laboratories. Boomerangs used for unintended purposes. Besides their main use, boomerangs were also used by Australia's Aboriginal people for fire control and rituals. Today, boomerangs are mainly used for sports and entertainment. Historically, these throwing clubs were widely used as weapons for war and hunting by many cultures worldwide. The Australian Aborigines became famous for their use of the returning boomerang. It was a wooden, curved plate with a flat lower surface and an upper surface shaped like a wing. Scientists think regular boomerangs emerged independently worldwide, but returning boomerangs are often credited specifically to Australian Aborigines. The oldest objects of this kind are known from the late Paleolithic era, as evidenced by cave paintings in France. Similar drawings have been found in Australia, estimated to be up to 28,000 years old. It is known, however, that the ancestors of the Australian Aborigines arrived there about 50,000 years ago, so there is a possibility that boomerangs appeared in this region even earlier. Champagne at the bottom of the sea. A May diving expedition near Poland's Hel Peninsula in the Gulf of Gdansk made a double discovery. Specialists from Baltitech, searching for a World War II submarine at depths of 60 to 70 meters, instead found two 18th century sailing ships 2 kilometers apart. The first ship carried green glass bottles and stone jugs. Liquid analysis is pending, but past finds suggest some bottles contain champagne and Selters mineral water. Back then, it was seen as almost medicinal and supplied to royal palaces like St. Petersburg. The second ship was built later, at the end of the 18th century. Its hull is well preserved because the Baltic's low temperature and weak currents slow wood decomposition. Both objects are located right under the modern shipping route, so raising them to the surface is unlikely. Archaeologists will work with robots and photogrammetry. The discovery confirms active trade between the Baltic, Northern Europe, and Russia before steamships, and shows the shallow seafloor preserves commercial voyages as time capsules. Signs of the ocean. Oahu, Hawaii. At Waianae's Army Beach, the ocean has removed another layer of sand, revealing a long panel of 26 petroglyphs at low tide. Anthropomorphic figures, lines, and gestures were spotted after the 2016 storms. But this summer, the whole scene appeared. Around 35 meters of carvings on the sandstone, partially covered by bright green algae, are visible through the shimmering water. The dating is not simple, however. Archaeological materials from the district point to around the 500-600s a time, when the Waianae coast was already settled and maintained its own ceremonies and communication with the sea. Local tradition keepers view the composition as a ritual story. The main figure raises one hand and lowers the other, symbolizing sunrise and sunset. 8 figures are clearly male, while the rest lack distinct gender traits, which may be intentional for the narrative rather than a carver's error. The beach here changes yearly, with storms sometimes exposing or hiding this stone page. Shigursky Idol. In 1890, workers in Russia extracted peat from the Shigir swamp in the Urals. Instead of tree roots, they found a pine log marked with zigzags, strokes, and 7 odd masks facing different ways. The first radiocarbon testing in the 1990s already gave a staggering 9,500 years, and after a repeat accelerator mass spectrometry analysis in 2021, the age increased to 12,100 100 years. That's twice as old as Stonehenge and the pyramids. The acid-rich bog preserved the layer better than a sarcophagus. The wood even retained traces of flint tools, which people in the Stone Age used to carve on living pine. The idol's pattern is seen differently by everyone. Some believe the horizontal notches split it into 3 world layers, each guarded by 7 spirit faces. Others interpret the zigzags as a timeline. From bottom to top, you can see the tribe's journey after the glacier melted. There's also a version that it's a star map. The pattern resembles the summer constellation over the Urals many thousands of years ago. The main question is, why was the statue broken, drowned in the swamp, and weighed down? If it were just a totem, destroying it wouldn't be necessary. Perhaps the ritual involved killing the idol to begin a new cycle. Scientists have only determined the method. Flint cutters were heated to burn through wood, then the lines were smoothed. X-rays now reveal hundreds of such marks beneath the swamp's dense crust, but their purpose is still unknown. No settlements or similar figures are nearby. It's like the creators concealed their era's main work, and only a lone fragment of unknown history remains to us. Khat Shebib. A 150-kilometer stone wall like Khat Shebib should have a clear purpose, but its meaning remains unknown. This giant wall in Jordan was first noticed in 1948. Archaeologists cannot determine exactly when the wall was built or who built it. Khat Shebib runs northeast to southwest, sometimes splitting into parallel walls or branching to the sides. Archaeologists estimate the wall averaged 1 meter high and half a meter wide at its peak, making it unlikely to deter enemies. It was likely built to deter less dangerous pests like hungry wild goats. Traces of agriculture were found west of the wall, which may have marked the boundary between pasture and farmland. Why was this road flooded? Archaeologists discovered a unique flooded road on Israel's coast years ago. This section, which was recently studied, was part of an ancient trade route that was used back in antiquity. The road, which went through several settlements to the port, was unexpectedly flooded. The mystery is that its surfaces are much better preserved than expected for objects thousands of years old. The stone slabs that were used for paving were almost undamaged, which makes scientists think about the technology that was used in its construction. However, the puzzle that baffles people is that no one knows for sure why the road was flooded. Some suggest that it was the result of an earthquake, while others think that water could have come in due to changes in climate or the sea. All of this remains an open question, and research is ongoing. This was not created by humans. In 1995, divers first noticed strange circles with labyrinths and ridges decorated with shells on the floor of the Pacific Ocean. Initially, this was credited to currents and mythical underwater architects. The true explanation emerged in 2011 when an underwater photographer captured the actual architect, the white-spotted pufferfish Turkidzener bomaculezus. The pattern was simple and interesting. The male spends days plowing sand with his pectoral and tail fins. The structure can be up to 2 meters wide, with large ridges along the edges to catch the current. In the center, the fish sifts sand and places the finest particles on top. Shell and pebble decorations aren't just for beauty. The sand holds the eggs. The edges slow currents, and shells guide water flow. Females select mates by the nest's quality. A cleaner center and smoother ridges increase spawning chances. After spawning, the circle briefly becomes an incubator. When the larvae emerge, the structure gradually breaks down, and a year later the cycle repeats in the same place or nearby. Architecture and design here aren't metaphors, they're practical solutions. The shape is directly tied to the offspring's survival. Where signs of an ancient civilization are visible, it's often valuable to observe living creatures' behavior closely. The pufferfish doesn't build a city, but it expertly solves an engineering problem, choosing materials, considering currents, protecting the center, and attracting a mate. Sometimes intelligence in nature doesn't involve legends, just results. The Lost City of Atlantis. Atlantis is not just an ancient legend, it's a cultural phantom that still influences minds, dreams, and even science. Plato described it with remarkable detail. A huge island with a highly developed civilization, a powerful army, and a complex system of canals. He claimed that Atlantis was located beyond the Pillars of Hercules, opposite the Atlas Mountains, and sank underwater as a result of a massive earthquake in just one day, around 9,500 before Christ. More than 11,000 years have passed since then, and we are still debating whether it ever existed. Searches have been conducted in Crete, Santorini, Cuba, Brazil, Iceland, and the Atlantic. Scientists have suggested many theories, from the disaster on Thera to a mistaken memory of a submerged Sahara region. The problem is that we don't have a single direct archaeological proof. No artifacts, no remains, no genetic trace. Science can't fully disprove Atlantis' existence. What's most unusual is its widespread influence. The Atlantis legend inspired philosophical schools, occult theories, Nazi mystics, pseudosciences, conspiracy theories, and science fiction writers. Atlantis became a symbol of a lost golden age. It fascinates us because it's not just a vanished land. It's the idea that once we were more than we are now. Sometimes I think that Atlantis is not a sunken island, but a reflection of our dream. We want to believe people were once stronger, smarter, and better. So this story will keep resurfacing until we learn the truth. The mysteries of Chinatown. In the Chinese city of Shaoxing, Zhejiang province, during the construction of a water treatment plant, workers came across unusual layers of soil. Archaeologists from the Institute of Cultural Relics and Archaeology excavated and found remains of a coastal settlement about 2,500 years old. The find dates back to the time of the Yue Kingdom, which existed during the Warring States period from 475 to 221 before Christ. Excavations revealed by Cao Yuan was a trade and maritime center. Two large wooden structures covering about 1,300 square meters were found. The first is a stilt house with terraces and walls of straw, reeds, and wooden posts bound by grass ropes. The second is a large platform of 10 rows of piles along the Kaui riverbank. Such construction required precise calculations and knowledge of loads and soil moisture. Experts note that the mortise and tenon joint in the wood demonstrates an understanding of three-dimensional construction, which is characteristic of later dynasties. Clay urns, porcelain bowls, bronze drills, and stone tripods were found at the site. The pig burials drew special attention. The intact animal skeletons along the shore were probably part of a sacrificial ritual. These rituals show the settlement's inhabitants linked water to fertility and life. Archaeologists and city officials are planning to shrink the archaeological reserves area. The place is called a late Bronze Age time capsule, helping us understand how ancient Chinese cities relied on rivers and seas for construction. Living relatives of the Swiss mummy? Scientists studied the mitochondrial DNA of a woman whose mummified remains were found in the Barfüßer Church in Switzerland, and compared the data with the results of genetic analysis of potential living relatives of the mummy. The project made it possible to confirm the kinship of people separated by 22 generations, as well as to establish the identity of the deceased woman. The deceased woman, whose mummified remains were discovered, turned out to be Anna Katharina Bischoff, who died in Basel in 1787 at the age of 69. She was a priest's wife and had 7 children, but only the 2 eldest survived. Analysis of the woman's genealogy revealed that one of her distant descendants is United Kingdom Prime Minister Boris Johnson, whose father is related through Bischoff's daughter. The mummified remains of a woman who died in 1787 were found during the restoration of the Barfüßer Church in Basel in 1975. Experts from the private research center Urac Research, as well as their colleagues from scientific institutions in Switzerland and Italy, studied the DNA from the remains. Led by Christina Wurst, the scientists analyzed extensive archives and identified living relatives of the Barfüßer church lady. Then genetic research was conducted, which confirmed that the woman indeed has 3 living relatives. A message in a bottle. Norwegian archaeologist Jakob Bredesen was shocked to find a message in a bottle buried for over 150 years. The discovery occurred during the excavation of an ancient Viking cemetery. Archaeologist Anders Lorange left the message in 1874 when he first explored this burial mound. No Viking mound in Norway had been opened in over a century, Making it remarkable they chose to excavate this one again. The burial mound where the bottle was found belongs to the legendary King Outbjorn. He was buried with the largest Viking ship in the world. The Norwegian Ministry of Cultural Heritage started the excavation to nominate the burial mound for United Nations Educational, Scientific, and Cultural Organization World Heritage status. Inside the bottle, they found a note left by Lorange, 2 19th century coins, his business card, and a letter. The note says, "This burial mound was excavated in 1874. Fallen warriors were buried here, burned with the ship, weapons, and ornaments. 26 shields, 2 swords, an axe, arrows, and other artifacts were discovered and given to the Bergen Museum." The burial mound became famous due to the large number of preserved artifacts, which confirms the traditions of Viking funeral rituals, where warriors were often sent on their final journey on ships with weapons and armor. The Vikings were Scandinavian seafarers and conquerors who explored and captured coastal areas from the 8th to 11th centuries. Some scholars believe that they may have been the first Europeans to reach North America. A crusader's sword at sea. While diving, Shlomi Katzin from Atlit, Israel, found a 900-year-old sword. Other ancient artifacts were close by. Sand layers on the seabed suddenly uncovered a true treasure trove. Archaeologists had monitored the area for a long time, a natural bay that has served as a shelter for ships for thousands of years. Earlier discoveries showed that the area was inhabited as far back as 4,000 years ago. Representatives of the Israel Antiquities Authority note that recently, the number of people diving in this area has been increasing. Experts link this to their desire to find ancient objects. Unpredictable ocean conditions can bring artifacts to light. Even minor storms shift sand, revealing or covering seabed areas. Along with the sword, Katzin spotted clay pottery fragments and stone and metal anchors. The sword, about a meter long, is made of iron. It is still tightly covered with shells and other incrustations, so scientists are not yet ready to say anything about its owner. Specialists have begun work on cleaning the artifact. In any case, its history will be interesting. Starting from the 11th century, the Roman Catholic Church sent armies of crusaders to the Middle East. Their task was to reclaim places sacred to Christians. The Crusaders and their opponents, the Muslims, Ayyubids, and Mamluks, used straight swords of the same size and shape. Because the sword was found under 200 meters from shore, researchers are nearly certain it belonged to a crusader. Muslims built coastal fortifications to defend against Christian sea attacks, but did not travel by sea themselves. Giant fishing channels. Archaeologists made a sensational discovery. In Belize, on the territory of the modern Crooked Tree Reserve, 4,000-year-old fishing channels created by the predecessors of the Maya civilization were discovered. Researchers used drone data and Google Earth images to identify a complex network of earthen channels spanning several kilometers in swampy areas. These zigzag-shaped channels show people were already modifying the landscape. Archaeologists found serrated tips likely used for catching fish like catfish and reservoirs for storing them. The channels were likely built around 4,000 years ago by semi-sedentary people on the Yucatan coast and used for over 1,000 years. This coincides with the formative period when the Maya began transitioning to sedentary agriculture and the development of their unique culture. Major landscape changes like these channels came before the construction of Maya temples, roads, and pyramids, laying the foundation for their cultural development. These channels supplied food and boosted population growth and dietary diversity. Archaeologists believe that the knowledge and experience of these early peoples played an important role in the emergence of the great Maya civilization, connecting it to more ancient traditions. The oldest knives made from shark teeth. On the Indonesian island of Sulawesi, archaeologists found 2 tiger shark teeth that had been turned into knives about 7,000 years old. This discovery is evidence of the ancient use of shark teeth as weapons. Before this, the oldest samples found were 2,000 years younger. These tooth blades are associated with the mysterious Tolian culture, ancient hunter-gatherers who lived on the island long before the arrival of Neolithic farmers. The teeth, about 2 meters long, had special holes indicating they were attached to a handle. Scientists believe these blades were likely used in rituals or battles, Shark teeth might seem unusual for weapons, but ancient cultures used available materials. These knives were sharp, though their blades dulled quickly. Ancient people around the world used shark teeth for cultural purposes, turning them into weapons or even tattooing tools. This shows their respect for these marine predators. A rock crystal dagger. In the megalithic tomb of Montelirio Tholos, located in the southwestern part of Spain, archaeologists discovered a unique artifact, a dagger made of rock crystal dating back to around 3000 before Christ. The 22-centimeter dagger is almost fully preserved, including its ivory handle and sheath. Found in a separate chamber of the tomb, the dagger clearly held special significance for the deceased. Scientists suggest that this dagger was used for ritual purposes, since rock crystal was considered a symbol of purity and a connection to the spirit world in ancient times. Working with crystal required great skill, as it is a hard and brittle material, so such an item was extremely valuable. It is possible that the dagger served as a symbol of the owner's high status and was used in rituals related to the cult of ancestors or gods. Why did the Vikings need the Arctic? The Vikings undertook amazing sea expeditions in search of precious ivory, reaching the most remote northern regions of the earth. New genetic studies of 31 ivory artifacts found in European museums show that they reached Greenland and the Arctic, interacting with local peoples such as the Inuit and their predecessors, the Tunit. Almost half of these walrus ivory artifacts come from animals that lived in regions between northwestern Greenland and Arctic Canada. This indicates widespread trade related to the high demand for ivory in medieval Europe. Archaeologist Peter Jordan from Lund University believes that these findings raise questions about how small Greenlandic communities could organize such large-scale expeditions. Greenlandic sailors probably waited for the ice to melt to open up a narrow 10-week window for hunting and trading. There is no direct evidence of contact between Vikings and North America's indigenous peoples yet, but scientists think it's possible. Research shows that the Vikings were not only farmers and settlers, but also far-sighted traders, strategic and resource-extracting people. The high demand for ivory may have led to the over-exploitation of resources, which ultimately caused them to leave Greenland in the 14th century. The Galilee boat. Also known as the Jesus boat, it is an ancient fishing vessel dating back to the 1st century AD. This unique artifact was discovered in 1986 on the northwestern shore of the Sea of Galilee in Israel, when a drought caused the water level to drop significantly. The boat is 8.2 meters long, 2.3 meters wide, and has a preserved height of 1.3 meters, making it a typical vessel used for fishing and possibly for transporting people and goods across the Sea of Galilee in ancient times. Despite its nickname, the Jesus boat, there is no direct evidence that this boat was connected to Jesus Christ or his disciples. Nevertheless, the discovery has significant historical and cultural importance, as it dates back to the period when, according to the Gospels, Jesus and his disciples preached in the area around the Sea of Galilee. The boat could have belonged to local fishermen, and similar vessels were used for everyday life in those times. The vessel was built from different types of wood, which indicates that it was repeatedly repaired in an effort to keep it seaworthy. This is one of the rarest archaeological finds, allowing us to glimpse into the life and everyday existence of ancient people who lived on the shores of the Sea of Galilee during the early Christian era. Underwater base in Argentina. A secret Nazi underwater base on the coast of Argentina was the subject of rumors and theories for a long time, but recent research seems to confirm this theory. Researchers have found evidence of a shelter for German submarines in remote areas of the Argentine coast. According to some reports, these bases could have been used to hide submarines that brought Nazi officers and resources to South America after the war ended. The discovery includes remains of underground tunnels and shelters that may have been used as submarine docks and intelligence centers. Among the findings are metal structures, fragments of equipment, and old maps that indicate possible submarine routes along the coast. These objects may have been part of the Nazis' plan to create secret hideouts for their elite after the Third Reich collapsed. Argentina, known for its neutral policy during the war years and close ties with former Nazis, was an attractive refuge for fugitive German officers. Submarines like U-530 and U-977 docked on the shores of South America in the final days of the war, which only increases the likelihood that such bases could have existed. Ruins of the oldest underwater civilization. In the early 2000s, a team of researchers working under the Canadian company Advanced Digital Communications made a sensational discovery off the coast of Cuba. At a depth of about 600 to 750 meters on the ocean floor, they found strange structures resembling stone buildings. These structures looked like organized rows of giant stone blocks, some of which had a regular rectangular shape and resembled massive walls or pyramid-like buildings. The initial results of underwater research conducted using modern sonar led to the hypothesis of a possible sunken city that could have been swallowed by the ocean tens of thousands of years ago. According to some estimates, the age of these ruins may exceed 50,000 years, which is significantly older than the earliest known civilizations such as Sumer and ancient Egypt. This makes the possible discoveries even more intriguing, as it suggests the existence of ancient and possibly highly developed cultures that science knows nothing about yet. Some scientists believe that these ruins may represent the remains of an ancient city built before the last ice age, when the sea level was significantly lower. There is a theory that this area might have been inhabited by ancient peoples who were later forced to leave their homes due to rising sea levels. This hypothesis is supported by proponents of the theory about the existence of ancient sunken continents, such as Atlantis, described in the works of Platon. Some geologists suggest that these formations may be the result of natural geological processes, such as erosion, earthquakes, and other movements of the Earth's crust. Further research and analysis of the underwater ruins off the coast of Cuba require significant resources and time. Let's hope that the authorities will find the means to study these ancient ruins. The Qumran texts. These ancient Hebrew manuscripts were discovered between 1946 and 1956 in the caves of Qumran near the Dead Sea, and they revolutionized our understanding of the religious and cultural life of the Second Temple period. The texts found cover the period from the 3rd century before Common Era to the 1st century Common Era, and among them are some of the earliest known versions of biblical books, as well as non-biblical and deuterocanonical texts, including liturgical, apocalyptic, and legal documents. The biblical manuscripts are especially valuable as they allow us to trace the development of the scriptural text and provide unique comparative material for analyzing changes in religious texts of that time. These scrolls include fragments of almost all the books of the Old Testament, except for the book of Esther, as well as texts that were previously unknown or lost. The scrolls were probably created or preserved by the Essene community living in the Qumran area. Today, most of the scrolls are kept in the Shrine of the Book at the Israel Museum in Jerusalem, and their study continues. A vessel in the shape of a bull. In Salnica, Bulgaria, archaeologists discovered ritual artifacts over 6,000 years old. The excavations took place in the prehistoric settlement of Salnica, located near Provadia. This place was an important center for salt production, a valuable resource at the time. The first inhabitants extracted brine from salt springs, evaporating it in ceramic jars placed in pits. Over time, they developed special furnaces that allowed them to process up to 30 kilograms of salt at a time, which significantly increased the scale of production. However, a series of earthquakes weakened the settlement's economy and defenses, causing its decline. The recent discovery of a sacrificial ritual pit offers new insight into the inhabitants' spiritual practices. Artifacts included a bull-shaped zoomorphic vessel symbolizing strength and fertility, a ceramic vessel with geometric patterns, and miniature figurines. Remains of ancient dwellings of the Thracian house were found, which adds to the historical context of Salnica. An ancient time capsule. Jane Eastman, an experienced treasure hunter, recently made an unusual discovery at the bottom of a river in England. She found a Victorian-era glass bottle filled with pickles, Jane showed this amazing treasure to her followers on Instagram, where her find sparked a lively discussion. The bottle, made of green water glass, was preserved in excellent condition, and its lid, inscribed with W.N.D. Harvest Dogate Dog London, prompted Jane to research its history. She found out that the W.N.D. Harvest Company had been selling spices and pickles in London since the 1870s, and the bottle she found most likely dates back to the 1890s, 1910s. Jane said the bottle was completely airtight, so the pickles stayed preserved. The woman called it a real-time capsule and decided not to open the find in order to preserve it in its original state. To do this, she sealed the lid with wax. Long pickling jars were popular in the Victorian era because of their practicality. The only thing that is still unclear is whether the pickles have remained edible. The moment of the sinking of Ernest Shackleton's ship. The discovery of the Endurance ship under the Antarctic ice in 2022 was a real miracle. Now, thanks to modern 3D scans, we can see the ship that sank in 1915 in the finest detail. These scans show what the ship looked like when it was trapped by ice during the Imperial Trans-Antarctic Expedition led by Ernest Shackleton. The technology used for scanning made it possible to capture details such as plates scattered across the deck, a boot by the railing, and even traces of a signal flare fired as a farewell to the ship. Endurance remains nearly unchanged, as if it sank recently. These unique 3D scans allow scientists to study the ship, which, due to its remote location and ice cover, is considered one of the most inaccessible in the world. Amazing finds under the Nile's waters. Archaeologists have made an amazing discovery beneath the waters of the Nile near Aswan, a collection of ancient Egyptian artifacts and rock carvings connected to a time when the city experienced a powerful flood. The relics date back to the reigns of Amenhotep III, Thutmose IV, and Psamtik II. Around 4,500 years ago, Aswan was a key trade and military center. Gold, wood, and spices were traded here, and temple, obelisk, and pyramid materials came from local granite quarries. After the Aswan Dam was built, most of the city was submerged. The Franco-Egyptian Archaeological Mission discovered unique rock reliefs depicting pharaohs, hieroglyphic inscriptions, and other sculptural elements. The work was carried out using modern technologies such as underwater scanning, photogrammetry, and 3D modeling. These methods made it possible to document the discovered artifacts in detail and create their digital copies. Of particular interest is the depiction of Amenhotep III, who ruled Egypt for about 40 years and left a rich legacy. His burial was in the Theban necropolis on the Nile's west bank, across from modern Luxor. Unfortunately, many monuments associated with his era were damaged by floods, but the new discovery gives hope for the restoration of these historical relics. A black granite slab. Heraklion, once a major ancient Egyptian port, sank underwater after a devastating 1st century before Christ earthquake. Its existence was long considered a myth until French archaeologist Frank Godiot discovered the lost city in the early 2000s in Abu Qir Bay, near the modern coast of Egypt. The most remarkable find was a massive black granite slab on which the name of the city and details of its connection to the ancient Egyptian gods were inscribed. Archaeologists also discovered dozens of sunken ships, well-preserved statues, temples, and various artifacts like jewelry, coins, and personal belongings. Excavations are ongoing, and each discovered object sheds light on the role of Heraklion as a major center of trade and religious life. The city, now beneath the sea, is a reminder of how natural disasters can change history forever. The Lake of Skeletons. Rupkund Lake in the Indian Himalayas, known as the Lake of Skeletons, contains hundreds of human skeletons at its bottom. The age of these remains varies greatly, and it is still not exactly known how all these people died. It was previously assumed that they might have been victims of a single disaster, such as a powerful storm that claimed the lives of a large group of people. Recent studies have only made the mystery more complicated. Scientists analyzed the DNA of 38 discovered bodies and found that the remains belonged to people from different eras, separated by thousands of years. These people arrived at the lake at different periods of time, which disproved the theory of the mass death of a single group. The research began 10 years ago when geneticist Kumarasamy Tangaraj from the Indian Center for Cellular and Molecular Biology sequenced the mitochondrial DNA of 72 skeletons. Some were of Indian origin, but some of the remains belonged to people with DNA characteristic of Western Europeans, particularly from Crete and Greece. Interestingly, the time range of these findings also turned out to be diverse. Most of the bones date back to the 7th to 10th centuries AD, but among them, there are also remains from the 19th to 20th centuries. The unknown causes of these deaths add to the mystery of this place. Infanticide or rituals? The burial of infants in the homes of the Iberians, who lived on the Iberian Peninsula during the Iron Age, has long raised questions among scholars. Various theories have been proposed, ranging from infanticide to rituals. However, a recent study has helped to shed light on the nature of these burials. Researchers have concluded that the infants died of natural causes. Most likely it was due to premature birth or complications during delivery, rather than as a result of ritual actions. This conclusion was reached thanks to the analysis of children's teeth using advanced technologies such as microscopy and synchrotron radiation. The study examined the remains of 45 infants, and the methods of optical microscopy and microfluorescence helped determine the moments of birth and death with high accuracy. A key factor was the discovery of the neonatal line in the teeth, which forms around the time of birth. This data allowed scientists to prove that many infants died immediately after birth due to health conditions. The Iberians usually practiced cremation, so the discovery of uncremated newborns in living quarters used to cause controversy. Something unexpected at the bottom of the sea. Off the coast of Sicily, workers noticed something unusual sticking out of the sea floor, which led to a rare archaeological discovery. In January 2022, near the Vendicari Reserve, at a depth of about 70 meters, the remains of an ancient shipwreck were discovered. When the team of marine archaeologists dived to the site, they found more than 40 rare Roman amphorae, many of which remained in their original positions, as if they had just been loaded onto the ship. These amphorae, estimated to be between 1,900 and 2,100 years old, represent a unique type of pottery known as Richborough 527. This type of amphora, with wide necks, spiral designs, and pointed bottoms, was first found in Richborough, England, and later discovered in Lipara, Italy. Scientists suggest that these amphorae were used to transport alum potassium salts, a mineral mined in Lipari. The stone spheres of Costa Rica. The Dequis spheres are unique archaeological artifacts found in the Dequis River Delta on Caño Island. This collection contains over 300 petrospheres made from gabbro, a volcanic rock like granite. The spheres range from a few centimeters to over 2 meters in diameter and can weigh up to 15 tons. These spheres were created by the pre-Hispanic Dequis culture, which existed from 700 to 1530 AD, although their exact dating and methods of manufacture are still debated among researchers. The stone spheres of Costa Rica are among the most famous stone artworks in the Istmo-Colombian region, although their purpose remains unclear, and there are several hypotheses. Some scholars believe the spheres were placed along roads or near chiefs' homes as symbols of status and power. Others believe that they may have had astronomical or ritual significance, possibly connected to the spiritual or cosmological beliefs of the Dequis culture. The technology used to create these stone spheres remains a mystery. It is known that they were artificially polished to an almost perfect spherical shape, but the exact tools and methods are still unknown. Due to natural processes and human actions, many spheres have been relocated from their original sites, making research into their original function and symbolism more challenging. The diver found an extremely rare treasure. In 1715, 11 ships left Cuba for Europe carrying treasures. A hurricane off Florida's east coast sank the ships, killing 1,500 sailors. Gitschlag and his business partner, Mike Penninger, as well as Nika Melio and Karina Leah, discovered more than 200 silver coins on the seafloor. The value of the find depending on the condition of the coins, could range from $12,000 to $130,000. When exploring the sunken ships, the team often finds ceramic and metal fragments, but coins are a real rarity. Silver coins can become corroded after hundreds of years in the water, but piastres are easy to recognize. The treasures were found among the wreckage of one of the two flagships. Gitschlag believes that the coins may have been minted in Mexico City. The treasure hasn't been appraised, but most will go to the museum, and only a small part will be sold. Shiva Lingam. In the city of Sirsi, in India, there is a unique pilgrimage site called Sahasralinga. Here, among natural beauty, there are stone images of Shiva Lingam that amaze with their appearance, especially during the Mahashivaratri festival. At this time, the water level in the river drops, making the sculptures visible and attracting thousands of pilgrims and tourists who wish to see and worship the sacred lingams. Shiva Lingam is a symbol of Shiva, one of the main deities in Hinduism, representing the source of creation and destruction. There are both religious and scientific debates about the Shiva Lingam. Some proponents of the ancient astronaut theory claim that the Shiva Lingam could represent a powerful technological device, similar in function to a modern nuclear reactor. Based on the shape and properties of the lingam, they suggest that ancient people might have used advanced technologies. On the other hand, modern scientists may interpret the Shiva Lingam as a symbol of atomic energy, which also has the potential for both great benefit and destruction. This analogy highlights the dual nature of Shiva, who in the Hindu tradition is both a creator and a destroyer at the same time. Terracotta water pipeline. Archaeologists have discovered a terracotta water pipeline that is 2,600 years old at the ancient settlement of Kiladi in Tamil Nadu, India. This discovery highlights the highly developed water supply systems of the civilization that flourished here thousands of years ago, and adds new information about the urban planning and engineering skills of the people of the Sangam era. Kiladi, 12 kilometers from Madurai, was discovered in 2014. The site is now key for studying the Sangam period, from 300 years before to 300 years after our era. Over the past decades, more than 20,000 artifacts have been found at this site, indicating an advanced society that excelled in brick production, bead making, and terracotta crafts. Representatives of the Tamil Nadu State Archaeology Department report the newly found cylindrical terracotta water conduit has 6 sections, each 36 centimeters long and 18 centimeters wide. These sections were carefully joined, creating a water conduit 174 centimeters long. It is believed that it was used for transporting drinking water, which demonstrates advanced hydraulic engineering skills. This discovery also broadens our understanding that advanced engineering practices existed not only in northern India, but also in the southern regions, indicating a more technologically advanced ancient India than previously thought. An ancient city in Micronesia. This amazing complex was built on artificial islands connected by a network of canals, which is why it is often called the Venice of the Pacific. The complex has around 100 artificial islets. The islands were created from massive basalt blocks, laid out in such a way as to form walls, platforms, and buildings. Each structure is surrounded by water channels, which makes this place even more mysterious and impressive. The age of Nanmadol is estimated to be about 1,500 years, but some studies suggest that the first structures may have appeared much earlier. Archaeologists believe that the construction of this complex began at the end of the first millennium AD, possibly under the leadership of the local rulers of the Sodalur dynasty, who used Nanmadol as a ceremonial and administrative center. The main mystery of Nanmadol is how Pohnpei Island's inhabitants built such a large, complex city with limited technology and resources. Each basalt block used in the construction weighs from several hundred kilograms to several tons. Transporting and installing such heavy blocks would have required significant effort and knowledge. The basalt was quarried on the other side of the island, which meant it had to be transported across difficult terrain and water. Given that ancient builders lacked modern machinery, this achievement seems nearly impossible. Some researchers suggest that the stone blocks could have been transported using rafts and ropes, while others point to the possible use of a system of levers and ramps. However, none of these theories fully explain how the ancient Micronesians managed to lay and align these massive structures so precisely. Nan Madol is also surrounded by many legends and myths. Local residents believe that the city possesses magical properties and that it was built using supernatural powers. Some myths claim that Nan Madol was home to spirits and was used for rituals related to ancestor worship. Even today, this ancient city inspires awe and respect among Panapay residents, who avoid Nan Madol after sunset, believing spirits inhabit it. Rare artifacts from the Titanic, an alligator leather purse and tiny, still fragrant perfume bottles are among the precious artifacts recovered from the sunken Titanic. The location of the warehouse with these relics is strictly confidential. All that is known is that it is located in Atlanta, Georgia, United States of America. The shelves are filled with thousands of items, from an overturned bathtub and portholes to tiny buttons and glassware. Thomasina Ray, the director of collections at Royal Mail Ship Titanic Inc., showed a bag made of alligator leather that belonged to Marion Minwell, a third-class passenger. Marion was a 63-year-old milliner traveling to the United States to see her daughter. Important documents and photographs were preserved in her bag. Her tragic fate was that she had originally booked a ticket on another ship, but ended up on the Titanic and became one of the 1,500 who perished. Among other artifacts are perfume bottles belonging to Adolf Saalfeld, a perfumer and first-class passenger who survived the disaster. The perfume's scent is still noticeable, even after decades underwater. The collection also includes a bottle of champagne with a drink inside, found among numerous kitchen utensils at the bottom of the ocean. Titanic was a luxurious liner, and there was a huge amount of champagne on board for first-class passengers who enjoyed the highest level of comfort. The tableware on board reflected class division: plain white ceramics for third class, exquisite plates with gold trim for first-class passengers. These items help recreate the atmosphere of life on board. The company Royal Mail Ship Titanic Inc., which is authorized to recover artifacts from the ship, recently announced its intention to retrieve the Marconi radio equipment that transmitted the distress signals. Some believe that the sunken ship is a burial site that should be left undisturbed. However, Thomasina Ray points out the importance of preserving the memory of the tragedy through these artifacts. And what do you think? Should the ship be left alone, or should we try to bring it to the surface? Share your opinion in the comments below the video. The Tornado of 1764. On June 29, 1764, in the German city of Waldeck, it was the day of repentance and prayer, Buß und Betag, a traditional holiday in Saxony. Almost all the residents gathered in the church, reflecting on their faith and asking for forgiveness for their sins. At that time, a powerful tornado struck the city, sweeping through the region, tearing down houses, breaking trees, and leaving destruction in its wake. Fortunately, the church's stone walls saved most residents, with only one death. On a normal day, there would have been more victims. At that time, there were no instruments to predict weather anomalies, and people were defenseless against such a phenomenon as a tornado. Knowledge about such natural disasters was scarce, and scientists could only rely on eyewitness accounts and damage assessment. But the German scientist and naturalist Gottlob Burkhard Hensmer did a tremendous job studying the destruction. 6 months after the tragedy, he published an extensive report on the events, which went down in the history of science as one of the first studies of its kind. Hensmer noted that the tornado reached an F5 level on the modern Fujita scale and a T11 on the Tornado and Storm Research Organization scale, one of the highest categories of strength. The tornado was 900 meters wide, with winds over 480 kilometers per hour. The tornado swept through forests, uprooting mighty oaks, hurling huge stones 35 meters into the air, and collapsing buildings like houses of cards. Along its path, the Lichtenberg forest was destroyed, mansions and farms wiped out, many animals killed, and people injured. Hensmer, known for his scientific methods, carefully documented the disaster. He measured tree trunks, checked roof thickness, interviewed witnesses, and examined the weather that day. His research was the result of a careful, almost detective-like analysis, and was published in a 56-page report containing 77 paragraphs. This document remained in the archives for nearly 250 years until its discovery in the Schwerin Library, a major find for historians. Hensmer's report is different from other descriptions of natural disasters of that time. There is no hint of mysticism or supernatural explanations in it, only facts. Hensmer used an empirical approach, drawing conclusions based on objective data, which made his research a significant contribution to the science of that time. I hope you enjoyed the video and that it deserved your like. Thank you for watching until the end. Goodbye, everyone.